Alright, time for some more illogic. Last time we went over our Season 12 draft breakdown for the Buffalo Bouffalant. Please go check out that video first if you've not done so already, as we broke down the team as well as some very important rules, including the inability for our Garchomp to Terra, but everything else on the squad having that ability freely, which should make for a very interesting season. This time we've got our Week 1 match against Zach's Summit County Psyducks. Timestamps will be in the description. Zach and I have a crazy history in the league, including him defeating me in Season 5 en route to his VGC victory, and being my second loss in a regular draft league after raking me over in Season 6. After that, it's been all Bouffalant, including a big win as a gym leader in Season 7, a Season 8 shellacking with Arctivish, 2 wins in Season 9, and a dominant win in low tiers in Season 10. That's 6 in a row to this point, so hopefully we've got his number now, but it seems like he always drafts well, and with a bit of investment, we know he can always be a threat. In speed order this season, he's got the Iron Valiant, which cannot terrestrialize, followed by Mousehold, Sandy Shocks, Toad Scrollback, Excalibur, Rotom, Fan, Gyarados, Skeledirge, Scizor, Dunsparce, and Quagsire. It looks a little bit top-heavy to me, with some real standout threats at the top, and some of the other mons, maybe not so much depending on matchups. For example, in this one, Dunsparce doesn't look particularly threatening to me. I'm not entirely sure what it's attempting to do, but I have a lot of very strong coverage, plus access to taunt all over, plus the wherewithal to understand what setup option it's going for, not too worried about that. But maybe Mousehold could be a little bit more intimidating. It's basically forced to run wide lens every week for Population Bomb, but it outspeeds quite a few team members actually, and can actually remove hazards past Goldango too, and my normal resistant immunity are actually stacked on top of each other there as well. But that's actually about it there. Scarf's priority galore, the Goldango which only fears bite, and Rough Skin Garchomp make for a bad time for the Mouse family, so I don't think it will come this week. Rotom Fan is kind of cheeky. It'd be a ground immunity that can pass around burns, but with multiple ground types and multiple mons that outspeed or don't care about burns, I don't actually see Rotom accomplishing too much in this matchup at all. I say that, but people seem to favor bringing it against me, so maybe I'm off base with that, but I like my matchup into it with just some raw power. This may be a weird one, but I think Scizor could very well be left behind here too, even with access to Thief for Goldango and strong bullet punches. I have a Fire type as an easy switch, Goldango who requires special coverage for Scizor to hit, even Garchomp should be out trading it thanks to Rough Skin, add in Gastrodon and Azumarill who don't really care much for what Scizor is doing, as well as the lack of recovery options on Scizor this gen. I'm not sure it accomplishes as much as you may think in this matchup. I have no problems wearing it down and taking less than 100% across my team members while doing so. Finally, I came down to a few different mods here, but ultimately I think Sandy Shocks may be the one member that just misses the cut. Gastrodon takes minimal damage, Garchomp outspeeds it and is immune to the main stab, and Wo-Chien resists most options from this mon. It could maybe set up some spikes to act threatening, but it seems to me as though my options are more threatening to it than vice versa. It's probably a better mon, though, than what I think will come in Gyarados, but I think that'll come by merit of having a ground immunity, something the team would be lacking otherwise. I think I'll be concerned about Garchomp enough that Gyarados is a good check to it, not to mention the possibility of Intimidate stopping other threats of mine, such as the Slithering and Azumarill, who may struggle to hit it otherwise. In a pinch, it could also go Dragon Dance and do something like Terra Ground to make it immune to electric moves and power up Earthquake, or go Terra Flying to actually be able to hit and threaten Wo-Chien. Just enough utility that it may just be coming. My surprise pick that I think has a good shot of coming is Toad Scroll, which actually threatens most of my team aside from the Wo-Chien, and maybe Slitherwing a surprising amount. Goldango blocks Rapid Spin, but not Spore thanks to Mycelium Might, plus Earth Power is great coverage against that, and plenty more of my team. It seems pretty good overall. I think there's a decent chance it'll come, and it has just enough tankiness and power that it could work here. But the top 4 are my guaranteed picks, and we'll go with the unaware core of Quagsire and Skeledirge here first. Quagsire, I think, could actually be water absorbed this week to better wall Azumarill and Gastrodon and try to set up hazards and Toxic. You know what Quag does. It's a wall that can set up hazards now too this gen. I love the mon, but it'll be very annoying to face this week as always. Skeledirge is the other half of that defensive core that can self-recover, and this is one of his best Terra candidates too. Fire Ghost is okay typing, but more so offensively than defensively, as my top 3 picks can all nuke it with super effective damage from their stabs. I'm anticipating a Water Resist Terra type for Azu that is also at least neutral to the rest of my top mons. Something like Grass, maybe Water would make sense. It's pretty straightforward as well. It's going to Will-O-Wisp my offensive attackers and Hex away with Torch Song boosting its special attack intermittently and clicking Slack off when needed. These two are strong defensively, but hopefully being straightforward means I'll find a path around them. Finally, though, it's the big boys of Excalibur and Iron Valiant. Iron Valiant's coverage is insane, including Stab, Moonblast in close combat, Knockoff or Shadow Ball for my Goldango. The Psyshock could potentially come for Toxtricity, even Calm Mind for setup. I can see a choice item, Life Orb for that boost in damage, even booster energy to outspeed literally anything I could cook up. The damage output is crazy from both sides. It can run mixed so easily, and it outspeeds almost everything I've got. Yikes. But even worse is Baxcalibur. Even without the chilly reception or support, Baxcalibur is tankier than you think and has a stupid high attack stat with amazing stabs complemented very well by Earthquake, the ability to Dragon Dance up, and terastallizing into Ice for powered up Ice Shards, Ground for Earthquakes, or a defensive type like Fairy for incoming fighting or Dragon moves. Baxcalibur just has it all and is the single mon I'm most afraid of, with or without Terra. As for me, despite a positive matchup against both Baxcalibur and Iron Valiant, Daxpon actually struggles against the rest of his team and doesn't even really beat those top two very well either. Despite being a fairy with a large physical defense stat, Baxcalibur can take a hit and click Icicle Spear after a D-Dance to ruin Daxpon's day, and Iron Valiant can resist Body Press while hitting with Moonblast on the special side. Add in Sandy Shocks, outspeeding the inability to touch Quagsire or Skeledirge despite the Willow immunity, and Scizor absolutely owning me, and Daxpon just cannot cut it. Lycanroc Dusk also looks like a revenge option for Baxcalibur, but struggles mightily as well. It's another mon that can get rocked by Baxcalibur, especially after a D-Dance, and falls prey to his two biggest Terra threats in Skeledirge and that Baxcalibur if it were to Terra, not to mention getting outsped by Iron Valiant, Scizor destroying me entirely, and the inability to break through Quagsire at all, which is just not enough. No good boys this time. Slitherwing was my 4th round pick, but it doesn't do much here to justify me bringing it. Destroyed by Iron Valiant with first impression doing a thing. Destroyed by Skeledirge. Baxcalibur outspeeds and destroys me, and Quagsire switches in very comfortably. It's not a good look against the top mon, so I'll pass on it this time. Cyclizar made it pretty far in the process, good coverage, outspeeds his whole team, pretty good utility moves here, but it doesn't tank any hit particularly well, and I decide to go with my other option for hazard removal, so I'll leap behind my U-turning, knockoffing, rapid spinning friend this week. Finally, this may sound kind of weird, especially because of how all over the initial analysis it was, but no Garchomp in week 1 here either. Baxcalibur destroys me with Ice Shard or after a Dragon Dance. Iron Valiant outspeeds and hits with Moonblast. Skeledirge tears out of fire and burns me. Quagsire doesn't take half unless I've got a boosting item. Gyarados walls me, and I even have another plan for hazard stacking, which doesn't even look that good, as all of his hazard removers can actually take advantage of Goldango or just run Boots, which looks very standard on many of them. Sorry, Garchomp, maybe next week. Instead, we're going to be going with a healthy mix of offense and defense, featuring a couple interesting pieces. First for me will be Goldango, who's got a Choice Scarf in week 1 to outspeed his whole team while keeping a modest nature. Stab moves are obvious. Shadow Ball in particular looks very spammable, as Zac does not have a Dark type on his side, while Make It Rain can OHKO his top 2 threats. Thunderbolt hits the Gyarados, which I found more and more likely to come as the week went along, and without a great option for the last slot. I thought about Trick, but nah, I decided to stick Terra Blast in there, with Terra Grass as an option to OHKO Quagsire. I'd already settled on Grass as a Terra type earlier as a way to Terra into a ground resist for Baxcalibur, among other things, while keeping neutralities in most everything else, so I figured I may as well include that option in case he thinks Quag will work at all for me, while hitting Sandy Shock super effectively and still doing neutral damage to things like the Gyarados or Iron Valiant. Pretty simple there, so let's talk about the other Choice Scarfer this week. It's going to be Toxtricity, which also outspeeds his whole team at neutral with a modest nature. Really like having that extra power there. Volt Switch doesn't look too spammable with 3 ground types, including 1 guaranteed bring and a couple with good looks, but Boom Burst, well, I guess that doesn't really look all that great either. Skeledirge being immune. However, the point is that the core is something that the rest of my team is prepared to break through anyways, and is a core I have several great answers to, such that if I break through one, Toxtricity is poised to go to town. Terra Normal Boom Burst should be doing a hefty chunk to everything. Even Scizor is going to hate having to tank the resisted hit, probably not even taking 3, and imagine if Skeledirge Terra's out of the ghost typing, so we are so set at that point. That's, I guess, the main idea of the set. Wait to break through something. Imagine we get the Terra Grass Terra Blast from Goldango to break through his only ground type, and then we can click the spammable Volt Switch. That sounds pretty nice. This is a big part of the main offensive core there too, and if for some reason I think I can bring it out early and try to bait him into going into something else, I really like the option of Toxic Spikes to try and punish him a little bit there. If we're struggling a little bit to break through that core, I can bring this out again. If depending, he may think, oh, I have to predict if he's going to go for Volt Switch or Boom Burst. Bring in either one, it doesn't matter. We're going to lay down some Toxic Spikes and start to whittle away at that core, and potentially some mods in the back too. So I really like the idea of Toxic Spikes, and of course Sludge Bomb there for just some general coverage, something to hit the Toad Scroll as well. I think ground resists anyway, so maybe not, but Sludge Bomb just generally spammable, once again depending on what goes down, as well as a really nice reliable way to hit the Iron Valiant. So that's the main offensive core. Let's go to some utility offense here, and this one is going to come from Azumarill, who's rocking a Lumberry this week to tank a Will-O-Wisp from Skeledirge or a Yawn or Toxic from Quagsire. This in turn should let Azu nail the Skeledirge, which we are speed creeping here a little bit with a Liquidation, and even if it Terra waters or grasses, we are okay with that, again, thanks to the Toxtricity we just talked about, being even more spammable at that point. Quagsire's immunity is great, though, as we are packing Trailblaze to 2-hit KO all Quagsires, and after 2 Trailblaze speed boosts, thanks to the speed we're already packing, we even outspeed the Baxcalibur at max speed with this investment, meaning we can follow it up immediately with a Play Rough. Aqua Jet is great here, too, as well, of course. It can force out an Iron Valiant that is chipped or a Excalibur that is teared into ground and finish off other low enemies. You know how I love my priority. We could even boost that and Liquidation with the Terra into water for more power and neutrality to Scissor's Bullet Punch, even for the slightest bit of defensive utility, at least there too. That's pretty simple, as is the Talonflame set. We are rocking Taunt here to stop setup and hazards, Defog to remove hazards, Roost for longevity, and the Brave Bird for some safe damage. This also includes priority. I do foresee a situation where I can save this mon for Iron Valiant in the back, who has a booster energy, only for me to Gale Wings Brave Bird it out. And even if it switches, it won't have booster energy anymore, so I'll outspeed it the next time it's in. And remember that it can't even Terra out of the flying weakness, so it'll have to either get rid of the booster energy or go down. The Flame Body wasn't going to be doing too much for me anyways, as Baxcalibur is immune, Scissor is chipped by most everything else anyways, and Gale Wing as utility just made a lot of sense to me. Lots of HP investment to take a hit if we need. We should survive Glaive Rush from Baxcalibur, for example, and the rest to bump up the power of Brave Bird a bit. I foresee Taunt being the best move on the set, and Talonflame's typing is actually quite nice in front of something like the Skeledirge or the Iron Valiant, so here's hoping it can put in a little bit of work here. What I also anticipate to put in work would be my last 2 mons, my defensive core here. Gastrodon is my main hazard setter and special wall, as well as another way to thwart setup alongside the taunt and priority users. It's a standard Spadef set, which should be able to beat most Skeledirge trying to burn and hex me or accumulate boosts with Torch Song, because my non-standard move is Clear Smog to stop the special attack boosts, a D-Dance boost from Excalibur in a pinch, even Calm Mind boost from Iron Valiant, get up hazards, hit most things hard with Earth Power, and stall out. That's what the Slug does, and that's why it's on the team. And speaking of slugs, we've got good old Wo-Chien as the last one up here with a physically defensive set to compound Tablet of Ruin's ability to reduce the physical attack of everything else around me. Leech Seed for recovery against almost everything, Ruination to cut anything to half and ideally into range of my priority and Scarf users, Knock Off to remove boots and other problematic items, and Giga Drain for some reliable stab and recovery to help beat the mons I need to be able to beat, like Sandishocks or Quagsire. It's straightforward again, but it's amazing how I can tank hits from things like Iron Valiant and Excalibur shockingly well, even without Terra. I can sit in front of some mons forever thanks to the typing, and then Terra into Fairy to tank hits from another set of mons for entirely different reasons, dodging steal and fighting hits, in particular with this defensive Terra typing, and transforming Wo-Chien into a different kind of beast. That's going to be the squad for week 1, so let's see how we do. Not bad. Scizor is here in place of Toedsquirrel, which probably makes more sense in general, and even if I predicted Gyarados, I'm a little surprised it's here over Sandishocks. What to lead with? Well, I don't see hazard removal aside from Scizor, so maybe I can just lead Gastrodon to get up some hazards? That sounds good to me. Good luck to Zach, as Season 12 is underway. And it's Scizor. Not too excited to see that, but I have a couple cute defensive answers next turn if I need them. I want the rocks up now. U-turn will absolutely slam me. That's a choice band for sure, but my rocks are up. Quagsire doesn't threaten me too badly, so it's going to be an easy recover there for me as he gets his rocks up too. Seems like a pretty reasonable trade, as I got back up to full health there as well. As I found out Scizor is banded, and he probably knows Gastrodon is Spadef. No problems, but what to do about the Quagsire in front of me? Well, what's he going for? My guess is either more hazards or, more likely, a status move. His set is probably going to be Rocks, Earthquake, Recover, and a fourth move, and again, I'm guessing that's either Toxic or Yawn. I don't see Earthquake as being a likely play here, so I'm going to go into Goldengo to, grab that immunity to Toxic, and now I have a decision to make. I get a pretty free attack here, considering EQ isn't actually doing all that much to me, and he knows that I threaten the 2-hit KO back, so what does he think? I'll be staying in. Terra Blast all the way. That would be an awesome play to get the leg up immediately. Otherwise, maybe Thunderbolt for Gyarados, Make It Rain for Baxcalibur. Shadow Ball is very free against pretty much everything. I see no reason to risk or commit to the Terra immediately, especially when that Shadow Ball can do a ton of damage, and like I said too, if it's a 2-hit KO, like I'm thinking that I can still finish off Quag or get a hit onto this and something else, and that sounds really nice. In the early game, that sounds like a big win, especially if I can prevent something else like Baxcalibur from setting up in front of me, being locked into a bad move for it. Shadow Ball away into the Gyarados, whose boots prevent the 2-hit KO thanks to a 48% damage roll. I think this is about the easiest Earthquake in the world to see coming, and in the interest of the turn after, my answer will be the Wo-Chien. And the Earthquake will, of course, be coming off. That's about nothing. Recover up a little bit with lefties, thank you, and it's time for another free move. Knockoff should get me some good progress on something, and we're going to start seeing the difference in our play right now. His free attacks have been Toxic and Earthquake, which did about nothing. Mine, Shadow Ball got his Gyarados, one of his only Azu checks, to half. And now this knockoff, which does actually crit here, does take half of Scissor's health, and yes, remove the Choice Band as well. Obviously things will change here a little bit as he gets a very free U-turn that would chunk my Wo-Chien and get into something else. So what is the switch? I could definitely see Azumarill as an option, but I also don't fancy giving something like Quag a free switch in this early while starting to take chip on Goldango. I could aggressively go Goldango too, but that's inviting in a Terra to punish me very early. My middle ground play, I think, here will be Talonflame, who resists everything Scizor wants to do, should outspeed everything my opponent has while being able to roost up. U-turn does minimal damage there, nice, and into Baxcalibur, who has boots. That's pretty concerning, and we're somewhere between, he thinks I'm going to try to burn it, not knowing its ability, and this is the free turn of setup I needed to win the game right now. I think I have enough answers to everything in the back, so let's just err on the side of caution and click Taunt this turn. If it prevents me from losing right here, I'm pretty good with that. Taunt and the Ice Skull Crash miss. Oh, that could be big. I would not have gone down this turn, but what are the future consequences? We'll talk about that later, I'm sure. But for now, I'm satisfied to go into Azumarill to tank the hit. Well, I guess I could have gone into Azu in the first place in Scizor, as the double switch here brings us to a stalemate against Quagsire anyways. Interestingly enough, he takes the rocks damage and does not heal up with leftovers. That is kind of interesting. This is fine. If I'm him, I'm ecstatic to see this matchup. I think he stays in. Hopefully it will just be a Toxic here, because I have my Lumberry. That'd be pretty useful. So I'm just going to hit the Trailblaze. Trailblaze does well over half, take Rocky Helmet damage and Earthquake damage. Yikes. That's about worst case scenario. It gets me down to Earthquake range from Baxcalibur, actually. That's a big deal for sure, but now that I'm this low, I'll have to find other ways to beat it and pursue the KO that is in front of me. I think I just have to Trailblaze again, and this time it's going to go into the intimidating Gyarados to do a little bit of chip, and actually, with 2 Trailblazes under my belt, and the raw damage output of this guy, Play Rough will be enough to grab the KO if we can land. Yes, because we outspeed, even at -1, we are able to pick it up. No miss. Gyarados goes down for the first KO of Season 12. Very nice, very nice. His revenge option is going to be Scizor, interestingly enough. I don't think it'll KO. Actually, I think it might even without the band. So what's my option for Bullet Punch? Gastrodon and Goldango I think are pretty decent options. Maybe Goldango significantly better than the other, but I decided to go, after this rocks damage, I decided to go Talonflame again, seeing this as an opportunity to potentially heal up a bit. Sure enough, Bullet Punch doesn't do much. Would have KO'd me at Ice Skull Crash hit, but it didn't, so we got to go to Talonflame in the first place and roost up on the switch back into Excalibur, so I am back up to full, and we're in about the same scenario as before. Okay, it's a pretty obvious attack right now, right? I don't know if I can risk it, though. I think I have to click Taunt again just to be sure. I don't want to get out mind gamed here and click an attack whenever it seems like it's obvious for Taunt to come off, and then he could say, well, he thinks that I'm going to just try and set up, where I know I want to avoid that, I guess, that mind game right now. I wish I could have been getting some damage off of on Excalibur, but I think this is probably for the best. I'm going to Taunt, and of course, as we all knew, Glaive Rush is going to come in and do 88%. That is a lot. but that's pretty standard actually there too. I could try to Roost up again, but if he stays in, I just go down. I could switch into Azu, but it's getting low, and if he stays in, I'm punished, and if he does stay in, which I could hope for, I need damage pretty desperately. I could punish real hard with the downside of Glaive Rush, doubling the damage from Bravebird in return. Actually, Bravebird does a ton of damage to just about everything. Even Quagsire, the worst case scenario for guaranteeing the double knockout, would go down to Bravebird. And actually, that is what's going to happen. So even with this full Fizz Def, will go down to Bravebird, even as Rocky Helmet gets the KO in return, 5-4. Now, this seems like a pretty normal time for me to go over the current situation, but I'm actually going to wait one more turn on the double blind. You may recall me talking at Team Preview that I said I needed to break one of the defensive pieces to allow the Toxtricity to thrive. Well, I see no more ground types, so Toxtricity will be able to spam that Volt Switch pretty freely, so this seems like a pretty obvious idea for me here. We're actually going to take the Scissor Quick Attack. That's actually quite a bit, but it's chipped so low that Volt Switch does claim another one, 5-3, as I'm just going to go into Wo-Chien to take minimal damage thanks to the help of lefties a little bit there. Okay, we've got a full health Skeledirge with boots, as we see from the switch in that's going to happen right here, which makes a lot of sense. So we've got that, a full health Iron Valiant to my opponent's side, Rock's barely going to chip it at all, and a full health Baxcalibur that also has boots. On my side, Toxtricity is actually down to about half once it switches in again on those rocks. Azumarill is quite low, going to switch on the rocks again too, so probably about a quarter there. And Wo-Chien, Gastrodon, and Gholdengo nearly at full. My options for his biggest threats are actually looking a little bit low at this point, even more so if those two in the back can grab a speed boost from a Booster Energy Choice Scarf from the Iron Valiant, or a Dragon Dance from the Baxcalibur. To that end, I don't think Gastrodon is going to be too useful for anything here, except maybe spamming Clear Smog in the face of Baxcalibur. So I think my play for Skeledirge will be to go into the Water Slug instead of the Grass Slug. Torch Song sure doesn't do much. That's nice to see. Maybe I can force in something else here, or maybe better. We're going to, of course, just take a burn. That's fine. Get off a good bit of damage. 39% is threatening the 3 KO. But even better, though, too, we do get to see, once he gets that off and sees that this is just kind of a losing battle for him, that he's going to go into the Terra Water. I think we're both in this for the long haul at this point. I'll take the burn, of course, and once he gets up to this +2 special attack, and he knows that I'm threatening him a little bit there, going to show off the Clear Smog. So of course we're just going to tank some Torch Songs, some Hexes, force some Slack Offs, and all the while Earth Powering for some damage and recovering when appropriate, and Clear Smogging boosts every now and then. It's going to be a long grind here. Eventually, though, I'll get to the point where I'm going to force a special defense drop on the Skeledirge that I don't necessarily want to Clear Smog away, and then I'll have to start thinking about letting the Gastrodon go down. If the Skeledirge ends up low enough, I should be able to revenge it pretty easily with Gholdengo or Toxtricity. So I think that is something I really need to think about. What is the outcome here? I don't think that if I stay in with Gastrodon for this long, that there is a shot that it is going to be useful enough against anything else. This is a very Spadef build, so I don't think it's very useful against the Baxcalibur in general. It could, if it is healthy enough, potentially take a hit from Iron Valiant. I would have to be a little bit sneaky, though, I think, on the switch in here. For example, here where the Spadef drop is had, I could have potentially gone into Toxtricity a little bit earlier, try and take maybe a Hex or something, just a raw Hex, and maybe try and KO back once it was low. But I think I don't necessarily need to risk that either, because I don't think the Gastrodon needs to stick around any longer than it's at right now. I eventually do get to that point where it's at 39%, and I'm just going to let Gastrodon go down here. Again, I don't see too much more use for Gastro except maybe spam the Clear Smog. Now, here is something to talk about. I think Toxtricity is the easier revenge option, but here's maybe just the straight-up wrong play. On this turn, with it being Terra Water, I did still just click Boom Burst instead of Volt Switch, which does get the KO. Had I been able to KO with Volt Switch against -1 Skeledirge, which I think I did pretty easily, I could land on Gholdengo to click it, make it rain twice, and probably win, which is pretty simple. Instead, for whatever reason, I clicked the Boom Burst to take out his third water type of the match, actually, 4-2, as the revenge option will be Iron Valiant, thanks to the booster energy. And, okay, Toxtricity no longer outspeeds. From here, I have a few options, which again, I think we're going to go over later, but the path I decided on here was going to be to sack the Toxtricity and then go into Wo-Chien down, or now up 3-2. With Wo-Chien in here, my only goal is to get Iron Valiant into range of an Aqua Jet from Azumarill, but unfortunately one Ruination will not be enough to be able to do that. I do not do 47% with Azumarill's Aqua Jet. Even if I were to Terra Water, it would not quite do enough. To that end, I'm actually going to Terra Fairy here, which lets Wo-Chien survive a Moonblast with ease. Ruination connects, and we're pretty much there. Another Moonblast will bring me low, and then a Giga Drain will get him within range easily. Perfect. From here it should be easy, but I actually want to draw attention to this play here. He fails to KO me on the next turn, probably on purpose, and I also respond by purposely failing to KO thanks to Ruination. If I were to grab the KO here, Baxcalibur would come out and have the ability to get off a Dragon Dance in front of my face. I obviously cannot stop him with the set that I have, nor could I KO him or even bring him within range of Aqua Jet. And as such, I actually need Wo-Chien to faint here because I cannot have it be in front of the Baxcalibur. The best I could hope to do is Ruination a couple times. So Ruination, whenever it switches in down to 50%, it would have to Dragon Dance. So I get to Ruination again down to 25%. And there we're starting to look at some possibilities of me living thanks to Leftovers recovery, as well as possibly looking at being able to actually do enough damage to get it within range of an Aqua Jet as well. So my best hope would be for him to KO me, which, because I have Ruination and he only has these attacking moves, he finally will do. So I can Aqua Jet Revenge KO Iron Valiant, which I do, and force out the Baxcalibur last. It's straightforward from here. He attacks and KOs me, I go into Goldengo, I'm Scarf, I click Make It Rain, and it's the easy KO, as all other factors are accounted for. His Terra is down, his item is Boots, it's not Very Berry or anything like that. If he stays in to set up a Dragon Dance, I can clicking Play Rough this turn, which KOs Baxcalibur pretty cleanly. It does Dragon Dance, and Play Rough, of course, does miss. So, yeah, that's a 10% loss there. 2 Earthquakes from Baxcalibur will clean up the 1-0 loss to the Psyducks. GG to Zach. That ends our winning streak against Zach, and even more significantly, our Week 1 winning streak. I lost Week 1 of Seasons 3 and 5 in the WCL, which were both VGC seasons. So besides that, you'll have to go back to my first ever Draft League battle to find me at 0-1 to start a season. That's a ridiculous streak that's just been broken thanks to a 10% in part. There are a couple turns I think we probably should look at. First, obviously, the positive hacks for us. I'm going to go a little off script here again to be able to reset and go back to a couple of key turns. We're going to again go to the couple of positive hacks on my end. First here, we're going to look at the knockoff crit. It really doesn't do much here for my Calx. Toxtricity was still KOing later on in the match anyways when we Volt switched after the rocks were up and took chip from that a couple of times. So I think we can just blow right past this into the next obvious one, which is going to be this 90% miss from Zach on this Icicle Crash miss. We're going off into La La Land here a little bit, but I think the first turn that would have been impacted would be the switch into Talon on the Bullet Punch a little bit later, which we will get to in just a moment right here. I think it would be this turn that would be impacted next for sure. With Talonflame low from Icicle Crash, either I would still switch into the Talonflame and it would be pretty much going down to the Bullet Punch or a follow-up, especially because he's not choice locked anymore, or I go into something else. And in this case, probably Goldengo very safely. In that scenario, it's a free blind Shadow Ball for me, and methinks Quagsire would be sacked there anyways. And then on the blind, who knows where he's going. Skeletor's to Terra. I go into Gastro, Iron Valiant for the speed boost in Shadow Ball. I could stay in to tank a hit, maybe better than that with a Terra, or go into something like Wo-Chien to sack. If it's Baxcalibur, that's an easy stay in and hit with a Shadow Ball. Actually, then, the better play is to go Goldengo all along on this turn here anyways, even if Talonflame got back to full with Roost. So maybe that would have persuaded me to be better. It at least wouldn't have resulted in Talonflame being face-to-face with Baxcalibur and soaking a hit. So ultimately, I'm kind of going with a non-impact here on the Icicle Crash miss, but that may also be a result of Zach correctly clicking Glaive Rush into Talonflame later, or me not making the play on that turn either and clicking Taunt instead of going into something else. Okay, the turns at the end, we absolutely need to talk about, though, too. We're going to try and skip through all of these shenanigans here with this. We're waiting for it to be down to 39%, which is where we know it ended at. And then whenever I go Toxtricity here, this is, I think, again, pretty obvious that I need to go Toxtricity here for sure to Revenge KO Skeledirge. Volt Switch KOs, if it does, which obviously it would, I would go into Goldango, click Make It Rain twice per game, right? Well, here was my issue with that. I suspected Iron Valiant would have knockoff. I was actually wrong about that. That's kind of crazy. And if that's the case, what happens? Valiant clicks knockoff, doesn't enough to me, and Make It Rain KOs, but then Excalibur outspeeds. And if you were to KO me there somehow, maybe with an Earthquake, not sure if you'd be able to if I Terra Grass though, then Toxtricity comes in and outspeeds still because it's still got the Scarf and gets off a Boom Burst. And if I held Terra Normal should KO as well, and if not, Aqua Jet should be able to pick that up right after. Otherwise, Make It Rain, even at -1, should have KO'd, and if not, once again, it was within Aqua Jet range. So that sounds like a pretty simple 2-0 or 3-0 to me, right? Instead, well, I clicked Boom Burst, and in this situation where Iron Valiant came out, we could do the same thing, but with sacking Wo-Chien. So in this case, let's say I just Boom Burst, and again, this was probably the wrong play, and Iron Valiant came back in. If we wanted to play that scenario again anyways, we would just need Goldango to come in for free. And the one mon I did not outline in the contingency plans there was actually the Wo-Chien. Really, it didn't have much use here at all, aside from exactly the way that I did use it. So in this case, what if I were to have sacked Wo-Chien? Whether I get some damage off or not is really irrelevant, unless it got Valiant into range for Azu Aqua Jet, in which case we would just do the same scenario just with an extra mon in the back anyways. In this case, though, Goldango can revenge because it can take the hit, maybe even better with Terra, and then we're in the same scenario again, but with one mon fewer. Basically, there were other ways around this, and in those scenarios, the only way I would lose would be if -1 Make It Rain, or Terra Normal Boom Burst to not bring back Excalibur into Aqua Jet range. Considering the calcs I've been looking at, I don't think that's the case, so we're in potentially another situation where I could have played in a different way to get a guaranteed victory, but I did still play into a scenario where I win 90% of the time. So did I misplay? Was it the misplay that cost me the game? A 10% misplay multiplied into 90% bad luck miss, so was that maybe my fault to begin with? As with many times recently, it's complicated, but I feel like I played well enough to win. I probably should have just relied more on Goldango and its ability to soak a hit from Iron Valiant, but I went with this path that led to a 90% win chance. Indeed, looking back to Week 7 of last season, we've actually now lost 3 of the last 4 games, which sounds pretty bad, but to what exactly? Week 7, if you recall, was a crit from Volcarona onto Swampert, directly losing me that game. This game was lost directly by the 10% chance to miss, and even the semifinals game against the Burbs, you could argue, was lost thanks to a crit Stone Edge into a Thunderwave miss. On the other hand, I lost all 3 of those, and could have played this, plus the Burbs match better, plus the win in there against Sasbo was actually a double switch away from being a loss as well. We're in a weird spot. I'm not sure I'm at the top anymore. Maybe I'm just getting unlucky. Maybe I'm moving away from what may be good. I don't know, but in any case, we are actually at 0-1 at -1, trying to find our footing with the team again, though you could argue that 90% of the time we're talking about how I've already clicked with the team, and this could be just a totally different scenario in that case. That's fine, though. MVP for Week 1 was probably Azu up until the miss, and otherwise, I guess you could say maybe Toxtricity. I think there are clearly a couple of inconsistencies to work through. Again, I think I should have just relied on Goldango. This was actually a problem I had in my semifinals match where I didn't rely on the Tornadus Therian enough, and that ended up costing me that game. It would have made me play in a different way that would have ended up winning me the game, I think, a little bit better, or at least put me in much better situation if I just relied on my first round pick a little bit more. I guess I'd give the MVP, though, to Toxtricity for us this time. Again, I think some inconsistencies to work through. So next time we'll try to get back on track here in Week 2, and in that game we are going to be facing off against Adam's Pidgey Emporium, who also started 0-1. So maybe we can get a better break at that point. We'll see what happens there, and we'll see you then. So see you next time.